My neighbor knew I was next. While I was drinking morning coffee, the police called to say my body was found at the scene of a terrorist attack. I didn't know yet that this was the secret my father had kept for almost 20 years. It was still dark when the hammering on my front door ripped me out of sleep. I looked at the clock, 5:02 a.m. No one knocks at that hour unless something is genuinely terrifyingly wrong, and my heart immediately began to pound in my chest like a trapped bird. I pulled on an old sweatshirt and went to the door, feeling the cold floor unpleasantly sticky against my heels. Standing outside was my next-door neighbor, Ethan Cole. He had moved in a year ago, and in all that time we had exchanged maybe 2 polite sentences about the weather or whose turn it was to mow the lawn. Ethan was always quiet, polite, and kept to himself, so seeing him now, pale with uneven, ragged breathing, was deeply unsettling. He looked like he had just run a marathon escaping someone. "Don't go to work today," he said in a low, almost inaudible whisper that, nevertheless, sounded like a gunshot in the morning silence. He spoke with such urgency, such insistence, that I instinctively stepped back. "Stay home, just trust me." I stared at him, trying to gather my thoughts. "What are you talking about, Ethan? Did something happen?" He shook his head, but his eyes flashed with such a sharp, undisguised warning that a chill ran through me. "I can't explain right now. Just promise me you won't leave the house today. Not for any reason." The entire scene felt completely unreal. The cold morning air, the first, barely visible pink streaks of dawn on the horizon, and this man, usually emotionless, standing before me looking as if he was about to fall apart from internal stress. I took a slow breath. "Ethan, you're scaring me. Why shouldn't I go to work?" He hesitated. Then his voice dropped even lower, almost indistinct. "You'll understand by noon." Before I could ask another question, he took a step back, quickly glanced around the neighborhood as if checking for observers, and just as quickly walked back to his house. He never looked back. I stood there in the doorway in complete silence, my hand still gripping the doorknob, my thoughts racing. The rational part of me screamed that this was some kind of paranoia, that maybe Ethan was having a breakdown or had the wrong address, that I was simply overreacting. But there was another part of me, the one that had always trusted my gut instinct, and it insisted, "Do not ignore this." And there was a very strong reason for that feeling, one I couldn't just shrug off. 3 months ago I lost my father, Richard Miller. His death was sudden. Officially it was listed as a stroke, but in the last few days before it happened, he kept trying to talk to me about something very important, something he needed to show me. When I pressed him, all he would say was, "It's about our family, Sarah. It's time you knew." And then, before we ever had that conversation, he was gone. He left, taking his secret with him. Since then, strange things had been happening around me. A car with tinted windows parked near my driveway for hours, phone calls from blocked numbers. I would answer, but the other end was always silent. My younger sister, Emily, who lives in Europe, called to ask if I had noticed anyone new in our area. No one said anything directly, but I could feel it. Something was moving in my life. Something quiet, intentional, and most importantly, not random. My name is Sarah Miller. I'm 33 years old. A financial analyst at a major investment firm, Henning & Cole. I'm the kind of person who never misses a day of work unless I'm running a fever. My life was quiet, structured, and predictable. Right up until this morning. In that moment I made a decision. Not out of fear, but out of cold, simple calculation. If Ethan was wrong, I would simply take a personal day off. If he was right, I might be saving my life without even knowing it. I texted my manager, informing her I couldn't come in due to an unforeseen personal emergency. And I waited. The hours crawled by incredibly slowly. Every sound in the house seemed louder than usual. The ticking of the kitchen clock, the hum of the refrigerator, even the wind scratching the window sounded like someone trying to break through the walls to tell me something. By 11:30 a.m., I started to feel completely foolish. Nothing had happened. Ethan hadn't returned. Maybe I had overreacted after all. And then the phone rang. Unknown number. I answered, expecting maybe my manager or another spam call. Instead, I heard a calm, authoritative male voice say, "Ma'am, this is Officer Taylor with the County Police Department. Are you aware of a critical incident that occurred at your workplace this morning?" My breath caught. What incident? The officer exhaled and his tone changed. A heaviness entered it. There was a violent attack at your building. Several employees were injured. We have reason to believe you were present there today." My entire body turned to ice. That's impossible. I wasn't there. There was a second of silence, and then the officer continued. "We have footage of your car arriving at 8:02 a.m. Your work ID was used to enter the building, and security reports say you were last seen on the third floor shortly before the attack." My knees went weak. I gripped the edge of the table to stay upright. Someone had used my identity. Someone wanted me to be there. And someone wanted the world to believe I was there. "I'm telling you I wasn't there," I repeated, trying to maintain composure. "Someone must have cloned my key card." And then a thought hit me so hard a shudder ran through my body. My car. "Did you see who got out of the car in that footage?" The officer replied quietly. "The footage is corrupted. We don't see the face. Only the vehicle entering the garage with your license plates clearly visible." My pulse quickened. Whoever did this had access to my car or an identical vehicle. My identity hadn't just been stolen, it had been replaced. I looked out the window. My heart was racing. Was I being watched? Was someone waiting for me to panic and make the wrong move? "Sarah Miller," the officer said, his tone becoming even more formal. "At approximately 11:47 a.m. an emergency alert was triggered on your building's third floor. Coordinated attack took place. You are reported missing from the scene. We are required to locate you for your safety and for questioning." My grip on the phone tightened. Questioning? Why would I be questioned? This time the pause was longer, as if he were choosing his words carefully. "Evidence was found in the building. Items belonging to you were recovered near the scene of the incident." My mind went blank. Items belonging to me. That's when I remembered Ethan, his pale face, his shaking hands. "Don't go to work today." Someone had been planning this, and I was meant to be part of the plan, either as the victim or as the main culprit. As soon as the call ended, acting on pure instinct, I closed all the blinds and locked every door. My breathing was shallow. My mind raced back to every strange moment over the past few weeks. The man in the suit watching me from his car, emails from unknown senders asking if I would be in the office on Tuesday, the feeling that someone had gone through my belongings while I was out. It wasn't paranoia. It was preparation. Suddenly, there was another knock on my door. Sharp, controlled. Not like a worried neighbor, and certainly not like someone in danger. It was deliberate. I froze and stayed silent. Another knock. Then a voice. "Sarah, it's Ethan. Open the door. We need to talk." I moved slowly toward the door but didn't open it. "How did you know the police would call me?" I asked through the wood. His voice came back. Low and steady. "Because they are not coming to help you. They are coming to take you into federal custody. You were never meant to wake up in your own bed this morning." My head spun. "What are you talking about?" "They staged that incident to eliminate everyone in that building," he said. "And you were supposed to be there. Not as a victim but as the one they would blame. Now they need you alive, just long enough to confess to something you didn't do." A cold realization washed over me. Whoever did this didn't just want me gone. They wanted to erase me and rewrite my story, making me the villain. And everything that was supposed to happen by noon wasn't about the building. It was about me, about my father, about our quiet, irrelevant house, and about the billions of dollars that, as I would later learn, were dirt sticking to our family name. I slowly opened the door. Not because I completely trusted Ethan, but because I trusted fear even less. Without asking permission, he stepped inside and closed the door behind him. "They're already on their way," he said. "You have minutes, maybe less, before they arrive and declare this house a crime scene." I crossed my arms, trying to steady my breathing. "Why? Why me? What is going on?" He didn't answer immediately. He went to the window and quickly scanned the street. Then he lowered his voice. "Sarah, I didn't move here by accident. Your father asked me to watch over you." The words hit me like a physical blow. I stepped back. My father? No. My father was an accountant, a normal man. He never. Ethan turned to face me. "Your father never worked in finance. That was his cover. He was involved in a covert federal investigation for almost 2 decades. And you were part of that investigation even without knowing it. Your father was never just an accountant. He was the key witness in the biggest financial fraud case in the country's history, and the company Henning and Cole isn't an investment fund. It's a money laundering operation for very powerful people. I stared at Ethan, trying to process the fact that my entire life, my quiet desk job, my inherited home, was a staged lie built over my father's secret war. The fear hadn't left. IT had just shifted its focus from the unknown attackers to the known truth. A covert investigation? My father. I whispered, the sound barely a breath in the suddenly dense air of my living room. The sunlight trying to pierce through the blinds seemed weak, like it was fighting a losing battle against the shadows Ethan had brought in with him. I looked at the kitchen table, where I'd been planning to eat my sensible breakfast, and now it felt like the stage for a drama I was never cast in. He was meticulous about routines. He balanced spreadsheets. He hated surprises. He didn't investigate anything outside of tax codes. Ethan took a step toward the center of the room, his movements precise, unlike the frantic energy he displayed at 5 a.m. He was scanning the room, not looking for threats, but assessing the environment, like a soldier analyzing captured ground. That's what made him effective, Sarah. Predictability is the best camouflage. They watched him, yes, because he was quiet, but they never suspected what he was looking for. He was auditing their shell corporations, looking for the source of the initial funding for this origin initiative, they call it. He found it. And when he realized you were the result of that funding, that's when they moved to silence him. My head throbbed. It wasn't the shock of the attack. It was the slow, grinding realization of a lifetime spent blindfolded. The origin initiative. The tablet you showed me. The blood markers, the regenerative properties. Am I a lab rat, Ethan? Is that what my father was trying to save me from? I felt a sudden, cold anger rising, hotter than the coffee I never got to drink. All those years of being told to be careful, to stay out of trouble. It wasn't parental concern. It was operational security. You are not a rat, Sarah. You are the first natural success, Ethan corrected, his voice lacking any sentimentality, which somehow made his words more credible. Your father's journal, the one you need to get to, it explains the difference. They were trying to engineer these traits through complex retroviral treatments. Your father found records showing you were conceived under entirely natural circumstances, yet you manifested the exact genomic profile they were attempting to synthesize synthetically. You are proof that their entire multi-billion-dollar project is based on flawed, expensive science. You, Sarah, are the walking, breathing flaw in their logic. That makes you incredibly valuable and infinitely dangerous to them. I walked over to the window, pulling aside a sliver of the blind just enough to see the street. It was eerily quiet now. No police cars, no black sedans yet. Maybe Gabriel had been right. Maybe the sirens were just a distraction for the main play that was meant for my office. If they wanted me dead, why stage an attack at work and then send the police to my house? Why not just get me at the office or here this morning? Ethan leaned against the door frame. His posture suddenly relaxed, but his eyes never left mine. They needed a clean narrative. If you simply disappear, the inquiry focuses on you. Why did Sarah Miller run? They control the narrative. If they kill you at work, it's a corporate tragedy. If they show up here now, they are rescuing a potentially traumatized witness who skipped town after a traumatic event. They want you alive just long enough to find the vault and then, under duress or whatever methods they use, have you sign away your access codes or confess to some fabricated corporate espionage. That gives them legitimate cover to seize every file your father stored. The thought of signing anything, of conceding any ground, made my stomach clench. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about my father's memory, the final thing he tried to protect. The key card you gave me, the one with the red emblem, that opens the vault where the files are? Yes. It's a physical key tied to his unique biosignature, which fortunately for you, you share to an extent. The vault contains everything, the evidence, the names of the senators, the generals, the corporate executives who funded the initiative. Your father was one step away from bringing it all down when they got to him. That vault is the only leverage you have left. I reached into my pocket, touching the cold metal of the key card through the fabric of my jeans. It felt heavy, disproportionate to its size. And you, Ethan? Why are you doing this? You were supposed to be the quiet neighbor who fixed his hedges. Why risk your life for my father's legacy? He paused, looking away for the first time toward the backyard. His face, usually so unreadable, held a flicker of something complex. Not kindness, not heroism, but a deep, ingrained obligation. Your father and we served together a long time ago on a detail you wouldn't know about. I owed him a debt that couldn't be repaid with money or silence. When he contacted me 6 months ago, just before he got sick, he told me to relocate. He said, "Watch my Sarah. If they come for her, you stop them, even if it means starting a war." I didn't know the scope then, only that my debt was coming due. I didn't move in next door to trim hedges, Sarah. I moved in to be your shield. The confession hung in the air, thick with unspoken military history and broken promises. My father hadn't just been a whistleblower. He'd been involved in something requiring armed security from a neighbor he clearly trusted more than he let on. I suddenly understood why the strange incident started after he died. The people they were afraid of were only now realizing their key target, me, was still alive and accessible. So, the police are coming to take me as a suspect, and the people behind the attack are coming to retrieve their asset, I summarized, feeling strangely detached, as if my body was finally catching up to the trauma. What's the next move? We can't just stay here. This is my house, they know where I live. We leave now. The moment you opened the door to me, you became a fugitive. We are heading to a secure off-site location I prepared. It's a temporary holding pattern before we hit the vault. The most critical thing now is that you stop thinking like Sarah Miller, financial analyst, and start thinking like Subject 7B, genomic asset. Ethan stressed, walking purposefully toward the back door leading to his own garage, which was attached to mine by a narrow utility corridor. They are hunting a missing person who skipped bail on a terrorist charge. We need to move faster than their paperwork. He stopped at the threshold between our two homes. Listen to me carefully, Sarah. When we get to the vault, you must not let them talk you into compliance. They will offer you safety, reassurance, the ability to go back to your old life. That life is dead. It burned up at 8:02 a.m. when your car entered that parking garage without you. Do you understand? Compliance is just a slower death. You must trigger the revelation protocol. It will expose everything, and it will burn down their entire operation. It will also make you their #1 global target, but it's the only way to honor your father. I nodded slowly, a cold resolve setting in. The anger and the fear had solidified into something hard and functional. I was no longer Sarah who worried about quarterly reports. I was the walking genetic secret, the key to my father's final truth. I didn't want my old life back. That life was built on a lie that almost got me killed. I understand, Ethan. I'm going to choose the fire. He gave a curt nod, satisfied with my compliance to his plan for now. Good. I need you to grab one thing from your study, something small, something that proves your identity beyond the fake evidence they planted. A childhood photo, a specific piece of jewelry. Something that roots you here, not the planted evidence they have waiting for the police. As I moved toward my study, the first distant wail of a siren sliced through the morning stillness. It wasn't frantic or chaotic like a typical emergency response. It was a low, measured sound, moving slowly, deliberately, like a predator testing the wind. They weren't rushing. They knew I was cornered, and they were confident. They hadn't sent the police yet. They were sending the cleanup crew first. We were driving away from everything I knew, but the real conflict wasn't with the police sirens behind us. It was with the ghost of my father, who had sacrificed me to the truth before he died, and with Ethan, whose debt might be more dangerous than his loyalty. I grabbed a worn silver locket from my nightstand, the only gift my father ever gave me that wasn't practical or tax-deductible. It wasn't about proving my identity to the world. It was about proving it to myself. When I got back to the utility corridor, Ethan was already waiting, his face tight. The methodical, low wail of the siren had grown closer. Not just one, but a complex, overlapping sound of multiple vehicles converging. They weren't coming for an interview. They were executing a coordinated operation. They're closing the grid. The perimeter will be secured in 90 seconds, Ethan stated, his eyes locked on a small tactical screen he'd pulled out, a device too complex for a retired Special Forces guy settling debts. It confirmed he wasn't just a former associate. He was still connected, still plugged into the very infrastructure that was now hunting me. That thought added a new layer of friction to the fear. Was I being rescued, or merely transferred to a different handler? We moved through the utility corridor into his garage. The space was meticulously organized. Tool chests, a workbench, and a large dark SUV that looked built for something more rugged than suburban errands. "Get in the back," he ordered, his voice clipped. I hesitated, looking at his calm, professional face. "Ethan, the initiative, you said it's tied to prominent families, influential bloodlines. Was my father trying to protect me, or did he use me as bait to expose them?" The question was harsh, reflecting the sudden, brutal realization that my entire life had been transactional. He didn't flinch. "He protected you for 33 years, Sarah. They only realized your significance 6 months ago, when your blood test triggered a high-priority alert. He bought you time. The difference now is that you are no longer a child to be shielded. You are the final piece of evidence. And the evidence needs to be delivered." His words, devoid of warmth but brutally honest, struck me as the most realistic thing anyone had said to me all day. I climbed into the back seat, the door clicking shut with a heavy final sound. Ethan was already starting the engine, his hand moving across the console. The SUV's navigation screen blinked rapidly, showing a preset route that avoided all main arteries. He backed out slowly, methodically, not panicked, just efficient. We reached the end of his driveway just as the first black, unmarked vehicle turned the corner onto the street. It wasn't a police cruiser. It was an armored black Suburban. A heavily built man in a dark suit was already stepping out, his eyes instantly locked onto Ethan's SUV. "They had me." "Hold on," Ethan muttered, and the SUV surged forward, tires spitting gravel onto the manicured lawn. We sped away just as the man raised a radio to his mouth, clearly giving chase coordinates. As we drove, the tension inside the SUV became almost suffocating. The air was thick with unspoken truths and the roar of the engine. We drove for what felt like hours, though it was probably only 15 minutes, weaving through residential back roads, Ethan pushing the speed limit just enough to maintain distance without attracting unnecessary attention. "Tell me about the money," I demanded, breaking the silence. My analyst brain, the one that hated incomplete datasets, needed specifics. Henning and Cole. My father was auditing them. How deep does the fraud go? Ethan glanced in the rearview mirror, checking both the road and my reflection. "It's not just fraud, Sarah. It's an economy. The initiative is the cover story for a massive, multinational black market operation. They don't just want the genomic asset, they want the research, the patents, the promise of a new class of superhuman soldiers, which they plan to sell to the highest bidder. Henning and Cole is the front for laundering the money from the illegal testing labs and recruiting sites. Your father found the transfer logs for almost $200 billion. Not in a year, but in the last 5 months alone. That's why the attack was at the investment firm. They wanted to destroy the hard copies and erase the digital trail. $200 billion. The number was abstract, but the sheer scale of the corruption made my heart pound. My father had been playing chess against an empire, and he was losing until he managed to move his queen me into the final decisive square. "My sister, Emily. Does she know anything?" Ethan's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "Emily is safe for now. She's too far removed from the core operation. She was simply a secondary security concern, someone they might use as leverage if you ever became suspicious. She's currently under a different kind of watch, a subtle one, but I have a failsafe in place. If anything happens to me, she gets a coded message telling her to disappear immediately." A cold wave washed over me. Even my sister was just a pawn in this horrifying game. My father's sacrifice wasn't limited to his own life. It consumed the peace of every person he loved. We hit the main highway, and Ethan took a sharp exit into a semi-industrial area. He pulled the SUV into a long dark warehouse alleyway. He turned off the engine and the sudden silence felt deafening. "We have to wait here for 45 minutes. My extraction point is being prepped," he informed me, looking around the alley with intense scrutiny. "I need to make 2 calls. Don't move. Don't open the doors. If anyone approaches, you press the red button below the emergency brake. It triggers a short-range EMP. It will disable the car, but it will also fry any electronic surveillance nearby." He picked up a satellite phone and walked to the far end of the alley. I watched him. He was a perfect stranger who knew the most intimate, deadly secrets of my life. He was my protector, but he was also a ticking clock, counting down to the moment I would have to choose between survival and my father's dying wish. I realized I didn't know his real name, his background, or even what he planned to do after I triggered the revelation protocol. Would he turn me over to some external authority? Was he truly working for a debt, or for someone else entirely? This was the core of the conflict, trusting the one person who could save me, knowing he was inextricably linked to the machine that had already killed my father. As he spoke into the phone, his voice a low, steady murmur. A subtle change occurred in the alley. A plain white utility van, the kind marked with a generic telecommunications logo, turned into the other end of the alley. It didn't look threatening, but it was moving too slowly. Its windows were tinted, even though it was a utility vehicle. It stopped. No one got out. It was just sitting there silently watching. My heart began to hammer again. Ethan was still talking on the phone, his back turned to the threat. He hadn't seen it. The van was a hard, immediate conflict. I reached down, my fingers searching for the red EMP button under the dash. Should I trust my gut, or trust Ethan's calculated timing? If I pressed the button now, I might save us both, but I would ruin his extraction plan. If I waited, the van might be the first wave of the people who killed my father. I bit back a gasp, my eyes locked on the white van. A split-second decision. The van's front window slowly rolled down an inch, just enough for me to see the reflection of the driver's sunglasses. A cold, indifferent reflection that seemed to be looking right at me. I was trapped between Ethan's timing and a new silent threat. When I hit that red button, I didn't just disable a van. I triggered a trap my father had laid for his own protector. My hand hovered over the red EMP button. The white utility van was too still, too patient. It screamed infiltration, not police procedure. Ethan was still on his satellite call, his voice a low murmur, completely unaware of the immediate danger blocking our exit. If I hit the button now, the EMP blast would knock out the van's electronics, buying us seconds, but it would also kill Ethan's satellite link, his lifeline, and potentially ruin the extraction plan he had so carefully constructed. If I waited, we were dead or captured. The weight of the decision felt like it was crushing the cabin of the SUV. I looked at the locket in my hand. Prove your identity. My father didn't just want me to survive. He wanted me to know who I was fighting. This wasn't just about $200 billion, it was about genetics and power. Suddenly, Ethan snapped his conversation short, cutting the caller off mid-sentence. He spun around, his head snapping toward the back window. He saw the van. His eyes widened fractionally. The first real sign of alarm I'd seen from him. Damn it, they found us faster than anticipated, he hissed, slamming the satellite phone onto the dash. That's not the federal task force. That's internal security. Sarah, did you see anyone approaching? No, just the van. It's sitting there, completely silent. I managed to choke out. Before Ethan could process that information or reach for the ignition, the side door of the white van slid open with unnatural speed. Two figures, also in dark tactical gear, similar to the first guy on my street, but this time there were two, stepped out, not rushing but advancing with grim purpose. They weren't waving weapons, but their stance was clear. We were surrounded. The button, Sarah. Now. Ethan yelled, simultaneously throwing the SUV into reverse. My fingers clamped down on the hard, cold plastic of the red button. A sharp thunk echoed from under the dashboard, followed by a high-pitched whine that lasted only a second before dying out completely. The dashboard lights flickered violently, then stabilized, but the satellite phone on the dash was dead, its screen black. The effect on the white van was immediate. Its headlights, which had been aiming directly at us, winked out. The two figures paused, momentarily confused by the localized electronic pulse. It gave Ethan the margin he needed. He slammed the accelerator, the tires screaming in protest as we shot backward out of the alley. He executed a violent three-point turn in the narrow space, narrowly avoiding clipping a dumpster, and we were back on the main road, speeding in the opposite direction of the initial police sirens. Good instinct, Ethan gasped, knuckles white on the wheel. That killed their local comms and GPS trackers, hopefully. But they know we're mobile and heading toward the vault location. Ethan, wait, I said, my voice regaining some of its analytical strength. If they were internal security, why didn't they just blast us? Why the slow approach? Why the EMP effect? The pulse killed your phone too, but they stopped theirs instantly. Ethan was navigating a hard left onto a side street, his movements becoming even more frantic. They didn't stop theirs because they weren't relying on commercial gear. Their running shielded. He paused, breathing heavily. This is the problem, Sarah. We're chasing a target who is supposed to be completely ignorant, but you're acting like you were prepped for this. The air in the car turned arctic. This was the shift. He wasn't just my protector anymore. He was questioning my credentials. Prepped how? I challenged, holding up the silver locket. By picking up a family heirloom? By having a bad feeling? You said my father asked you to watch me because I was the key witness. Ethan drove in silence for another tense minute. The sound of our engine the only noise besides my own ragged breathing. We were approaching the final turn before the remote, abandoned bunker I now knew was our destination. Your father told me you were naive, Ethan finally admitted. His voice low and laced with something that sounded like bitter disappointment. He said he'd briefed you on the basics, the money, the cover story. He specifically told me not to reveal the biogenetic angle unless you were directly threatened by the initiative operatives, not the police decoys. But you reacted to the staged office attack as if you knew it was designed to frame you, not kill you. You didn't ask if your identity was stolen. You immediately asked who was driving your car. That's not a civilian's leap of logic, Sarah. The moral dilemma crystallized. Was I supposed to be this informed? Was my father's final plan not just to expose the fraud, but to turn me into a weapon, even if it meant lying to the man sworn to protect me? Maybe I'm smarter than my father gave you credit for. I shot back, the adrenaline sharpening my retort. Or maybe you missed a key part of your briefing, Ethan. You're focused on the money trail, the physical evidence. But my father wasn't an accountant running from a spreadsheet. He was a scientist running from a creation. The initiative wants the genetic asset. They want me. Why would he send me to the vault, the place where all his evidence against the financial crime is stored, if the real danger was genetic? I leaned forward, pressing the advantage while he was distracted by the road. If the evidence in the vault only proves the fraud, and they're willing to kill for the genome, then the vault is a distraction, isn't it? A decoy. Your job was to get me to the evidence. But what if my father's real failsafe wasn't the vault? What if it was something he told me specifically, something you don't know about because you were only assigned to the financial cover-up? Ethan slammed on the brakes 100 yards from the bunker entrance. He turned off the engine, the sudden silence echoing the tension. He looked at me, his expression now completely unreadable, a mask dropping into place. What did he tell you, Sarah? He demanded, the protector gone, replaced by an operative demanding clearance codes. The note said to trust me. But you're questioning the mission parameters. What did you really take from your house besides that locket? I held up the locket, opening it to show him the empty space where a photo should have been. Nothing else. Just this. I paused, letting the weight of the moment settle. But when I went into my study, Ethan, I didn't look for a photo. I looked for the false bottom in my desk drawer. The one my father showed me when I was 10, saying, "Always know where your emergency cash is." I found 50,000 in bearer bonds. Not digital evidence. Physical untraceable cash. That wasn't for the initiative investigation. That was for running. The realization dawned on Ethan's face with slow, agonizing clarity. My father hadn't just prepared me for discovery. He had prepared me for escape from everyone, including his supposed ally. The true preclimax wasn't the approach of the enemy. It was the complete collapse of the only trust one thought I had. The bearer bonds, Ethan whispered, looking devastated, his composure finally broken. He didn't trust me. He never intended for me to take you to the vault, did he? He intended for you to disappear with the money after you realized the attack was a frame job. I met his gaze, the air vibrating with the sudden moral betrayal. I don't know, Ethan. But I know I'm not giving you the money, and I'm sure as hell not following your planned route to the vault if it means walking into the next trap. We have two paths now. Your father's financial endgame, or my father's escape route. Which way do we go? I chose fire over survival, and in that moment of ultimate betrayal, I didn't just release the truth. I unleashed what my father really made me. Not a genetic asset, but an unpredictable force. The silence in the SUV after my realization was heavier than the weight of the bearer bonds in my pocket. Ethan looked like someone who had just seen his entire mission brief disintegrate. The bunker entrance loomed ahead, the metal door looking less like a secure vault and more like the jaws of a waiting predator. "He didn't trust me," Ethan finally said, the words flat. All this time, I was fighting their perimeter forces, distracting the police decoys, assuming the ultimate goal was the vault. But if he gave you cash for escape, then the vault was the bait for me. He ran a hand over his face, suddenly looking every one of his years. He set me up. He knew I'd follow the protocol to secure the evidence. He knew that if I succeeded, you'd be captured by the authorities, officially labeled a terrorist, and the initiative would win quietly, claiming assets and covering the money trail simultaneously. The moral dilemma wasn't about choosing between two paths anymore. It was about choosing between two liars. My father, who used me as a sacrifice for the truth, and Ethan, who used me as collateral for his debt. "And you," I challenged, holding the locket tight. "Did you know about the bonds? Were you supposed to take me to the vault, secure the evidence, and then hand me over to the federal task force when they arrived to rescue the traumatized witness?" Ethan met my gaze, and for the first time I saw true defeat, not tactical frustration. "Yes. If I secured the vault data, my debt to your father would be cleared. He built the contingency to clean up the financial mess first. I was supposed to be the cleanup crew after the initial shock. If you had activated the revelation protocol, the chaos would have been manageable for them. They could have dismissed the data leak as a rogue agent's move, meaning me, while still gaining physical control over you, Subject 7B. He designed it so that even in victory they retained the prize. This was the absolute rock bottom of my father's complex, agonizing love. He hadn't just protected me. He had weaponized me by controlling the variables, even the variables of my supposed protection. Then we changed the variables again. I stated the decision cold and final. The sound of heavy vehicles approaching from the main road was now unmistakable. The real pursuit, not the decoys. I looked at the bunker door. The vault is the decoy. We don't open it. We go to the control terminal, but we don't hit the revelation protocol, we hit the acquisition protocol. The one you warned me about, surrender. Ethan stared at me aghast. "Sarah, no. That gives them everything. It gives them exactly what they expect me to do after I realize you betrayed me," I countered, my voice gaining a frightening clarity. My father set up the revelation protocol as the grand, heroic sacrifice. But he also set up the cash for escape. He knew both options lead to death or permanent capture. The only thing they haven't planned for is strategic surrender to the enemy's expected move. I walk in there, I trigger the compliance signal, and I become their asset again. But I do it on my terms. They think they've won control. That's when the real fight starts. I opened the SUV door. "You owe my father a debt. Pay it now, Ethan. I need you to create the biggest, loudest diversion possible the second I step inside that bunker. An event so catastrophic it forces their entire attention away from me, long enough for me to trigger the compliance signal and then immediately vanish using the resources I actually have." "Vanishing with $50,000 in bonds won't stop a global operation," he protested weakly. "It won't stop them, but it will buy me months of untraceable travel time, while they waste resources trying to re-establish control over their reclaimed asset. I disappear into the noise you create. I go dark. You have to become the massive threat they think I am, the rogue agent gone rogue with the evidence," I said, pointing to the dead satellite phone. "They'll hunt the man with the broken communications link and the proof of the $200 billion fraud. That's you now. You become the immediate threat, and I become the immediate prize they must contain." I stepped out into the cold metallic air. The approaching engines were close enough now to hear the crunch of tires on gravel. I looked back at Ethan, the man who was supposed to be my savior, now my unintentional scapegoat. "Tell my sister I love her. And thank you, Ethan, for not being as predictable as my father thought." I turned my back on him on the SUV and walked toward the bunker door, which groaned open automatically, perhaps sensing the pre-programmed proximity of its designated subject. As I entered the dark chamber, I didn't look for the journal or the terminal. I looked at the shadows, knowing that the ultimate act of defiance wasn't exposing the monster. It was letting the monster think it had already won. only to find its most valuable property had slipped through its fingers once more. The door sealed shut behind me with a heavy, definitive thud. In the darkness, I didn't search for the acquisition protocol button. I searched for the structural weak points, the ventilation shafts, the path out of the vault before they could even finish celebrating their victory. The real game had just begun, and the rules were now entirely mine. The question wasn't what I was worth to them, but what they were worth to me to destroy.